Hello, YouTube. I would like to talk about creation and creators in general. I've been a computer programmer for about 30 years. In fact, it will be 30 years in 2 weeks when it's my birthday. I'll have turned 43. So 30 years, 3 decades as a computer programmer. And in that time, I spent half of it, about 15 years, as a video game programmer. And during that time, as a video game programmer, I've created worlds. And in those worlds, I created creatures. And I gave those creatures feelings and thoughts. I played God. What's interesting about that is my God, or me as God, is kind of similar to how some Christians view their God. I'm outside the time-space continuum of my little creatures. They exist in a simulation that runs when I want it to run and stops when I want it to stop. I can rewind, I can fast forward, I control everything. I can stop the simulation, I can add elements to it, I can remove elements from it. I have complete control of everything. I can perform miracles. So in essence, I am a miniature God. And that allows me to think about God in the big world and compare myself as a God to the Christian God. I can compare myself to what we classically think of as God. Now, Christians often say that God exists outside the time-space continuum, which doesn't seem to make any sense to us. Because what is outside the time-space continuum? Nothing. Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, in my case, I exist outside my little simulator's time-space continuum, and I exist just fine. So perhaps God does exist outside the time-space continuum. But I'll tell you one thing. I cannot enter the computer myself and participate with my little creatures. In the Bible, in Genesis, God is walking in the Garden of Eden. He's walking in his creation. That doesn't make any sense. You can't be in your creation. If God existed prior to everything, that means his existence space is somewhere else, just like mine is. I exist here. I can create any number of universes and any number of creatures to populate that universe, but I can't join them. God couldn't possibly, if he exists outside of our time-space continuum, he couldn't enter our time-space continuum and join us. And it also doesn't make any sense that God has a biological son, Jesus Christ. That's nonsense. God has no genes. So how could he pass them on to his son? Another thing about me being a creator and having creatures at my beck and call is that I don't have favored creatures. I don't have a promised land for them. It's all whatever I created. It's all within my simulation. I don't get angry at them. I don't torture them. I can create creatures that can simulate or experience simulated pain and simulated pleasure, but it would be silly for me to torture them to experience this simulated pain, especially if I didn't like the way they're behaving. If I didn't like the way they're behaving, it's my fault because I created them that way. In fact, if they behave in unexpected ways, I'm happy. Because that means that they've moved beyond the simple parameters that I've created for them. And anybody who's been involved in any artificial intelligence knows that emergent systems, which is an artificial intelligence term, emergent systems are the most interesting to work with and the most surprising. And even though you may understand the rules, there's no way you're going to predict the outcome. Neotropic has some interesting videos showing the game of life, which has a ridiculously simple rule, or a set of rules to it, and yet shows incredible behavior. And so, in short, just because you understand the rules doesn't mean that you understand what's going to happen. So I created my little simulated world. I created my simulated universe. I created my simulated creatures. I am the simulated God. Another thing about me being a creator of these creatures, under no circumstance would I become angry at anything my creatures did. I wouldn't care if one killed another, because that's within the parameters that I've worked on. If my creatures do anything, I'm not going to get angry about it. And I'll tell you this also, I certainly wouldn't want them worshiping me. I mean, imagine if somebody told you that they created a game environment where they populated it with creatures, and those creatures, the entire purpose of those creatures was to worship them. What would you think of those people? Egotistical? Problems with personality? I think so. Certainly that's what I would think. So why do you think God would, if there was a God, if there was some entity that created the entire universe, why would you think that that entity would require any kind of worship or slavery or anything? Don't you think that that entity would be above such trivial, petty, ridiculous things? Because I'm above those things and I am just a human. I would hope that the creator of the entire universe would be above them.